The Zorros are canids only found in South America, and so are sometimes, uncreatively, known as the South American canids. While they look a little like foxes, and are sometimes called wolves, they are actually neither, being their own distinct lineage of canines. Today, we will be focusing on the maned wolf, the largest member of this rather unique group, and its extinct relative, the Falkland Islands Wolf. As usual, a document with the sources for the images used, along with research papers I found useful, will be included in the description of this video. Maned wolves are mammals in the order Carnivora. As you might expect from the name, Carnivora contains many of the carnivorous mammals, but they are essentially divided into two lineages, Feliformia and Caniformia. Feliformia contains all of the families that are more closely related to cats than they are to dogs, while Caniformia is the opposite. It contains all families more closely related to dogs than to cats. Despite being the stereotypical divide of cats versus dogs, it does appear that this is essentially the way the evolution of mammals in Carnivora functioned. I have covered the evolution of Feliformia before on my channel in my video about hyenas, so have a look at that for more information on that side of the phylogeny. For an extremely brief one-sentence overview, Feliformia contains not only cats and hyenas, but also the mongooses, civets and linsangs. Today, however, we will be focusing on the other side of the phylogeny, with the dog-like carnivores and Caniformia. There are 9 living families in this suborder, as well as 2 extinct ones. The most basal of these families is the extinct bear dogs and Amphicyonidae. They originated in North America around 45 million years ago, before spreading into Europe, Asia and Africa. The family went extinct about 5 million years ago, with the last known species being Dusicyon alicabo from eastern Africa. They were the first large carnivorous mammals to appear, with some species getting up to 700 kilograms or 1,500 pounds. They were a diverse family, however, and many species were much smaller than this, with the smallest only being around 5 kilograms or 11 pounds. Next on the phylogeny is Canidae. This is one you are probably all familiar with, as it contains the dogs and their closest relatives. We will return to look at this one in more detail soon, since it also includes the maned wolf, but for now let's look at the rest of Caniformia. Next are the bears and Ursidae. As a side note, this includes the extinct dog bears, not to be confused with the bear dogs from earlier. Common names can be extremely confusing. However, I mentioned them as they used to be considered a separate family, but are now believed to be a subfamily within the bears. Anyway, most of you probably know what a bear is. They are large carnivores found in the Americas and Eurasia. There are only 8 living species, but they include some of the largest predators alive today. The remaining members of Caniformia are grouped into 2 superfamilies. The first is Pinnipedia. This has 3 living families and 1 extinct one. These contain the seals, fur seals, sea lions and walruses. They are most known for their semi-aquatic lifestyle, and in fact are more adapted for the water than the land. However, unlike whales and dolphins, they do still rely on returning to land to rest, sleep and raise their young. Despite their adaptations to help in the water, many of them can still move surprisingly fast on land. The closest relatives of the pinnipeds are, surprisingly, the mustelids and their relatives in Musteloidea. This includes the last 4 families of Caniformia, including the largest. This largest one is Mustelidae, with the weasels, ferrets, badgers, osses, grissons, martens and wolverines, among others. The smaller families here are just as iconic, however, as they include the red pandas, skunks, raccoons, coatis, kinkajous and other closely related species. With that brief tour of the families in Caniformia completed, let us return to Canidae, where the subjects of today's video are included. All living canids are in the subfamily Canidae. This is actually where the word canine comes from. Canine can be accurately used to refer to any animal in Canidae. There are 2 other subfamilies in Canidae, but both of these are now extinct. Canids in the subfamily Cerdocyoninae have only been found in North America, living between 42 to 20 million years ago. This subfamily includes around 10 recognized genera, with 26 species between them. The other extinct subfamily is Borophaginae, sometimes known as the bone-crushing dogs. These were also endemic to North America, and while they started out as small, they quickly diversified and many species became much larger, such as the bear-sized Epicyon. There are 66 known species in the subfamily, and they can be easily distinguished from Canidae by the presence of a fifth toe on their hind feet. Canines, including the modern dogs, only have 4 toes. Canines first started appearing around 35 million years ago. Given that both of the extinct subfamilies of Canidae were endemic to North America, you might assume that this is where the family originated, and you would be right. Canines spent the first 2/3 of the evolutionary history on that continent as well, before dispersing into Europe, Asia and Africa about 7 million years ago. There are 13 genera of canines alive today, with about 39 species between them. These genera are broadly divided into 4 lineages. The first of these lineages only has a single genus, Chrysocyon. This contains the grey and island foxes. These are typically separated from the other foxes into their own lineage, as they are believed to be the most basal of all living canines. The next lineage is the rest of the fox-like canines. Most of these are in the genus Vulpes, but the raccoon dogs in Nycterutus and the bat-eared fox in Ottocyon is also included in this lineage. Foxes are typically smaller than the other lineages of canine and have a distinctive bushy tail. Next is the lineage you are likely the most familiar with, the wolf-like canines. The largest genus in this lineage is Canis, with the domestic dogs, coyotes, and various species of wolves. However, this subfamily also includes the genera Kuon, with the dhole, Lycaon, with the African wild dog, and Lupulella, with 2 species of jackal. The last lineage of canines is the Zorros, sometimes called the South American canids or South American foxes. This is despite being more closely related to wolves than to foxes, although they are a unique lineage and so are not actually wolves or foxes. The name Zorro doesn't help much with this taxonomic confusion either, as it is simply the Spanish word for fox. However, mammalogists still promote the use of this common name, as it at least distinguishes it from the wolves and true foxes when speaking in English. Note that Zorro is sometimes used to refer specifically to the genus Lycolopex, which does exclude other genera like the maned wolf. However, today I'm using it more broadly to encompass all members of the subtribe Cerdocyonina, which includes all of the living South American canids. I felt that I should include that small disclaimer just in case anyone wanted to get extremely technical in the comments. Anyway, we will go through this lineage more thoroughly than we did for the wolves or foxes, since it includes the subjects of today's video. The phylogeny immediately breaks off into 2 different lineages. The smaller of these starts with the bush dog, the only species in the genus Spearthus. While found throughout much of South America, it is rare throughout most of its range, being most common in Peru, Suriname and Guyana. The bush dog is the closest living relative of the maned wolf. We will talk more about the maned wolf in a minute. The other member of this clade is now extinct, but it was the Falkland Islands Wolf. As the closest known relative of the maned wolf, I will also talk more about it later, but for now, let us have a quick look at the other lineage of Zorros. The short-eared dog is the only species in the genus Atelocynus. Often considered one of the most unusual canines, the short-eared dog is only found in the Amazon basin, as it is specialized for life in the tropical rainforest. Next is the crab-eating fox, the only species in the genus Cerdocyonina. It has various names, including bush dog as one word, to distinguish it from the bush dog as 2 words that we talked about earlier. I've said it before, but common names can be very stupid. Anyway, as its name suggests, the crab-eating fox specializes in hunting for crabs in mudflats and wetlands. The remaining species of Zorros are all in the same genus, Lycolopex. This has 6 species in it, most of which have common names calling them foxes, such as Darwin's fox or the pampas fox. Many of them also have Spanish names, some of which are more commonly used in the English variant, like the culpeo. Many of them do look more similar to foxes than the wolves that they are more closely related to, but this is an example of convergent evolution. With our exploration of the Zorros completed, let us return to the species that we are focusing on. The closest known relative of the maned wolf is the Falkland Islands Wolf, Dusicyon australis. This species is sadly now extinct, but I did want to take a minute to have a closer look at it, since I am not likely to get another chance. As with most of the Zorros, it has a variety of other names, including the warrah, the Antarctic wolf, and the Falkland Islands fox. Wara is an interesting term that is thought to be the anglicised version of Aguara. Aguara means fox in Guarani, one of the Native American languages. As you might have guessed from the name, the Falkland Islands wolf was endemic to the Falkland Islands, where it was in fact the only native land mammal. This makes its origins, and especially how it arrived on the Falklands, very mysterious. Scientists theorise that it could have arrived over a land bridge during the last ice age, but this raises the question of why no other mammals arrived on the islands in the same way. Others suggest that they were brought to the islands by humans. While no humans were present on the islands when Europeans first arrived, there is archaeological evidence suggesting that humans had visited the islands, at least periodically, as early as the 1200s to 1400s CE. The Falkland Islands wolf went extinct in 1876, when the last known individual was shot. Its decline is attributed to human persecution. It was actually the first canid known to have gone extinct due to being hunted by humans. The decline of this species was well documented by visiting Europeans. In 1833, Charles Darwin noted that the animal was on both the East and West Falklands, but was already rare on the eastern island and declining rapidly on the western one. He predicted that it would become extinct within a few years. By 1865, the Falkland Islands wolf could no longer be found in most of East Falkland, and its decline continued, being declared extinct only 11 years later. It was not afraid of humans and was quite tame. Despite this, sailors were often afraid of it, with accounts of them running into the sea when one would approach. This reaction was likely elicited because they were large canines, and the sailors knew of the dangerous wolves from Europe or North America. Falkland Islands wolves were also very bold and curious. Charles Darwin, for example, wrote an account of one entering a tent and stealing meat from under a sleeping man's head. They were hunted both for their fur, which was considered very valuable, and because they were believed to be a threat to livestock. They were often poisoned by the settlers, but some also used their boldness against them. It is recorded that some men would try to bait them by holding a piece of meat in one hand. When the wolf approached, they would stab it with the dagger they held in their other hand. Unfortunately, this perception of local carnivores killing livestock was a common fear of settlers, and is something I investigated a little in my video on thylacines. Like with the thylacines, there is no evidence that Falkland Island wolves actually attack livestock. What is far more likely is that sheep were terrified by the wolves, mistaking them for dogs, and so panicked. In their terror, the sheep would sometimes run into bogs and swamps, becoming lost and/or drowning. The actual diet of the Falkland Islands wolf is unknown, but due to the lack of native land mammals, it likely consisted of seal pups, ground-nesting birds, and possibly invertebrates. In fact, much of the life history of the Falkland Islands wolf is unknown. It is suggested that they lived in burrows, but this is not known for certain. The issue is that despite its recent extinction, the Falklands were also not inhabited until relatively recently, so there is little historical knowledge about them. The only reports we have about the Falkland Islands wolves are from sailors in the 1800s. There are also not many dead specimens worldwide, with only about a dozen remaining between different museums and institutions. A couple of living animals were sent to London Zoo in 1868 and 1870. Neither of them survived long, which is not surprising given how little is known about their life history. Let us now turn to the maned wolf, Chrysocyon brachyurus, the closest relative of the Falkland Islands wolf. It is the only species in its genus and is the largest canine in South America. They weigh about 20 to 30 kilograms or 44 to 66 pounds and get up to 110 centimeters or 43 inches high at their shoulders. They also get their common name from the long mane of red hair on the back of their neck. Most of their body is a light reddish color, but this mane as well as their legs and nose are much darker. This mane is used to make themselves look larger when they are threatened. Maned wolves live in savannas in South America and are found in parts of Brazil, Paraguay, Argentina, Bolivia, Peru and Uruguay. The fact that savannas and grasslands are their preferred environment makes their most important adaptation their long legs, with some people describing maned wolves as looking like foxes on stilts. They are the tallest wild canid alive today. Despite this, they are not usually considered the largest, a title that is typically given to the much heavier and bulkier grey wolf. Their height gives them excellent visibility for hunting, while also allowing them to gather fruits from higher above the ground. Maned wolves are omnivores, and a large proportion of their diet is made up of the plant Solanum lycocarpum, a shrub more commonly known as the wolf apple due to this interaction. Wolf apples typically make up around 50% of a maned wolf's total diet, but this can be high as 90% for some individuals. The maned wolf is an extremely important seed disperser for this plant. They also have a symbiotic relationship with leafcutter ants. I should probably do a video about leafcutter ants at some point, but the thing to know about them is that they are the only animal, aside from humans, that use farming. They create gardens of a fungus which they grow and cultivate. Maned wolves often defecate on or near leafcutter ant nests, and the ants use this dung as fertilizer for their gardens. However, they discard any seeds they find into refuse piles outside of their nests. This process significantly increases the germination rate of the seeds, allowing more wolf apple bushes to sprout faster. Unlike most of the other large canids, maned wolves are solitary and do not form packs. They are monogamous, and the pair will defend a shared territory of around 30 kilometers squared. Outside of mating, however, the individuals rarely see each other as they follow their own hunting trails. They are crepuscular, being most active at dawn and dusk. They use their large ears to pinpoint the location of potential prey, and are also known to tap their foot to flush their prey out before pouncing on it. Captive maned wolves have historically been fed strictly carnivorous diets, no doubt due to humans making assumptions about them based on their knowledge of grey wolves and dogs. However, this led to them developing bladder stones and other health complications. Today, much more is known about the healthy diet of maned wolves, and so zoos focus much more on feeding them a mixture of food types, including fruits and vegetables. These diets are now carefully formulated to ensure that they are low in certain compounds known to cause bladder stones to form. Maned wolves use their urine to communicate. This could be to mark their hunting paths or where they have buried prey. Their urine has a very strong smell that some people have likened to smelling similar to cannabis. In fact, in 2006, someone at Rotterdam Zoo reported to the police that they smelled someone smoking marijuana. The police investigated, only to find that maned wolf urine was the cause of the smell. This also leads to a different common name for maned wolves, the skunk wolves, due to the strong smell. They can also communicate with an unusual vocalization known as a roar bark. This is a rather unhelpful name, so this is what it sounds like. It does sound like some combination between a roar and a bark, and is a very distinctive call. Because it is a low sound, it can be heard for many miles, giving them a form of long-distance communication. They will use it to find a mate, warn away intruders, or if they are in distress. Maned wolves mate between November to April. They have a gestation period of around 2 months, with 2 to 6 pups per litter. The pups have black fur all over their body and a marked difference to the adults. This slowly turns red once they are about 10 weeks old. The pups rely on their parents for their first year, after which they become sexually mature and so fully independent. While most of the parental care is done by the females, the males will help a little. This data showing male parental care was obtained from captive specimens, so it is unknown how closely this correlates to their behaviour in the wild. Maned wolf pups have closed eyes until they are 9 days old. The female nurses them with her milk for the first 4 months, after which they will accompany her as she forages. She will introduce them to solid food by regurgitating her meals for them, starting when they are about 3 weeks old, and this can continue until they are around 10 months in some cases. In the wild, maned wolves have high infant mortality and can have difficulty breeding, with females sometimes having a litter only every 2nd year. In captivity, they are even harder to breed, especially in the zoos in the temperate parts of the Northern Hemisphere. Maned wolves are considered near threatened by the IUCN. They estimate the number of remaining individuals at around 17,000. Despite their large range, around 90% of maned wolves live in Brazil, with their populations in other countries, such as those in Uruguay, either going extinct or being displaced and moving back into Brazil. They face a myriad of different threats. These include standard ones like habitat loss and deforestation, to more niche ones such as being impacted by diseases spread by domestic dogs. As large animals that are perceived as predators, they also face human persecution to protect livestock. This is despite the fact that over half of their diet is plant material, and while they might go after the occasional chicken, they would not attack anything as large as a sheep. Unfortunately, maned wolves are also often killed after being run over by cars. In 2011, this sad fact did lead to a female maned wolf that was injured by a vehicle being the first wild animal in the world to undergo stem cell treatment. This was successful, allowing the maned wolf to make a speedy recovery from its injuries, and she was released back into the wild after only 4 months. I hope you enjoyed this video. Maned wolves may not be wolves, but they are fascinating animals with many unique adaptations. Falkland Islands wolves are also not wolves, but are a sad example of what can happen when humans encounter something new that they fear. Thank you for listening, and feel free to suggest another group of animals you want to see me cover in the comments.